Before we get started with today's podcast on Michigan basketball, head over to the 19.9 website and get yourself outfitted in retro gear. If you're new to the podcast, leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. If you really enjoy it, send a link to a friend who enjoy hearing our weekly discussions about basketball and basketball culture. Now, on to the show.
Isn't it amazing when Michigan can keep this game to a 19-foot 9-inch game inside that three-point line? It's all there. Nice move by Steve Fisher here. Turn it into the 19-9.
Welcome to the 19.9 podcast. I'm the Chucker, 19.9's resident historian, and today we're jumping back 3 decades and landing in Ann Arbor, Michigan, to talk University of Michigan hoops and gather some perspective on one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, college basketball team of all time. And we're going to do this with Freddie Hunter, who spins a basketball tale unlike any other. In a matter of 3 years, Hunter went from playing intramural hoops at Michigan to earning a walk-on spot with the Wolverines, to grabbing a starting slot, to then captaining the 1992 Michigan squad that made its memorable run to the national title game against Duke. Oh, and he did it all while battling spina bifida. So let's dig right into this wild, wild tale and welcome the one and only Freddie Hunter to the show. Freddie, thanks for joining us here on the 19.9 podcast.
Yeah, very glad to be here. Excited about the show.
All right. Well, we are, I want to dive right in, and I want to start here. So you are an undergraduate student at Michigan. What are you studying?
Studying psychology.
Studying psychology. All right. So you're just there as a student at Michigan in Ann Arbor, and you're on an intramural basketball team called what?
Freddie and the Seven Dwarfs.
Freddie and the Seven Dwarfs. So you are living this typical college life, right? How do you go? And I ask this with the most sincere respect. How do you go from that, Freddie and the Seven Dwarfs, to starting for a Michigan Wolverines team that would end its season in the national title game? How does that happen for Freddie Hunter?
There's a lot to that story. So it almost goes back to high school. So, when I was in high school, I was a 3-sport player. So I never focused in on playing basketball, playing hoops. Every time the season ended, I started another. But I just had this dream of playing college hoops. So, I had a lot of smaller schools, other places I could go, but, ended up being, Michigan. And, what happened, that gave me the opportunity to play basketball a lot more. And my jumping ability increased as well. So I started, having great success on the intramural court. And, those things just kind of built to where I started getting some looks and some opportunities. And I can go in that more a little bit later, but that's really a fun part of the journey.
So you talked about kind of you got looks. What do you kind of mean by that? Did a coach spot you? Did a player spot you? How did you get kind of pulled into this University of Michigan basketball orbit?
Yeah, it's kind of almost a little notoriety starts building about different people. So when you talk about campus and, we had the intramural leagues, we had the North NCRB, North Campus Recreation Building, CCRB, we had the intramural building. So you're playing all this time. So people kind of know who you are. And, when you walk in, people say, hey, I want you on their team. So, with that, and then there was Gus Mackers, these 3-on-3 tournaments that happened. And, really what happened at one of those 3-on-3 tournaments is Dave Balsa, who is the head manager, for Michigan, ended up coming over to Ypsilanti where the tournament was. And that tournament, I happened to be in a 3-point contest, the slam dunk contest. So he saw me in the slam dunk contest. And what happened, Danny, around that same time, I had this dream of trying to get onto the Michigan basketball team. So I was talking to everybody, trying to figure out what I could do, and ended up talking to Jay Smith and said, hey, what do I need to do? So I'm trying to have conversations, but he's on the team. He sees me there, and then he gives word back to the coaches. So those two things coming together, was open the door for me to be able to have the opportunity to, try to make the team.
Gotcha. So let's kind of dig back a little bit further, and just step back from that. So you mentioned a 3-sport player in high school. I think you have University of Detroit Jesuit High, right?
That
Big
is
school
correct.
up there. What were the other sports you played?
Played football. So I was a wide receiver and defensive back in football, and played baseball, pitcher and outfield.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, did you have a major growth? Because you're about 6'4", 6'5", right? I mean, did you have some major growth spurt, or did you come out of high school as 6'4", 6'5"?
No, that was the part. I had some upperclassmen in my high school that are kind of mad at me. He says, "Why did you wait so late to grow?" And it was funny. My dad, when he graduated, he was 5'4" from high school, and he grew 7 inches. That summer after he graduated. Mine wasn't as dramatic, but I was playing as a 6'2", about 185-pound center in high school. Averaging 8 to 10 points, 8 to 10 boards. So that's not going to get too many looks. But I was always the defensive specialist. I knew the game. And then when I grew, about 3 inches, added some pounds, I actually did ROTC my first year. So that kind of transformed my body from just a high school person to, when you're doing all those push-ups and sit-ups and pull-ups, I gained that strength that was needed. So a lot of those things worked together with playing more. And then my jumping ability came right at the end of high school. So I was able to refine that. So those things were why, I didn't get any looks, not D3, D1, D2, NAIA, junior college. I didn't have one single offer at all. But it worked out perfectly because I was able to get into Michigan and, able to, start pursuing that dream.
Pretty wild. And so let's now go back even further.
Yes.
You're an athletic guy, you seem to always kind of be involved in sports. And I suspect that was your childhood, but let's talk about basketball, because here at 1999, we're basketball junkies. When did you get involved with basketball, and what's kind of your origin story, so to speak? And was that kind of your love of all the sports you played?
Yeah, I think the love of sports really came from my dad. So I was had 2 sisters, and then I was the first boy. And, I think my dad also, because he grew late, he didn't really have those opportunities. So now along comes the boy. And, just from the beginning, there was always some ball in my hand. So we used to have the basketball, wrestle with the basketball. I used to do bowling. Baseball was one of his loves. So any sport that was out there, I played. But, my love was really for basketball. So I was fortunate to have a hoop in the backyard. So all the kids came along and, played in my backyard. So, continued to grow things there. I didn't play organized ball until 6th grade. So my uncle was actually coaching the team. It was my first time, playing organized and kind of figuring it out. So at the beginning of the season, I wasn't doing that well, but then, started to understand, timing, blocking, defense was, always my strength there. So I just continued to grow. And then UAD Jesuit in 7th grade, they had a basketball team and continued to play more from there.
That's cool. And so we ran through a little bit of your story about how you became a walk-on in Michigan earlier. And I would imagine, did you have to go through tryouts and kind of make the team, so to speak?
Yeah, at the time,
what was that process like?
Yeah, they were, there was not an official walk-on tryout that they had. So, one of the players, Kirk Taylor, always, kind of encouraged me, if you can get to preseason conditioning, that's the opportunity. So what I did, I just, with the looks and everything that happened, I was able to get a chance to work out with the team. There was me, there was another gentleman that wasn't on the team. And then, just from really just putting my heart into everything from on the track to, just scrimmages we had as players, I was able to show enough at that time for them to give me that invitation.
That's really cool. And so, your first season with the Wolverines is the 1990-1991 season, and that's only 2 years removed from Michigan capturing the national title behind Glenn Rice, Ramil Robinson, very memorable team. So how would you kind of describe your first taste of big-time college basketball? Was it a practice, a game? When did you realize, like, whoa, this is different?
In terms of the level and competing there, it was one of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was one of those preseason conditioning when you actually got a chance to play against the players. So you're never thinking that you can compete on that level, But, some of the things that I was able to do in intramurals, some of the things I was able to do in recreation centers in terms of, kind of tapping the ball away from somebody as they're driving, grabbing rebounds, I was able to do some of those same things at that level. And I never played AAU, so it was always, a higher level. But when you actually get down to it and you're on the court and you're competing and you see, hey, I can do some things, and that made the difference.
Yeah. And, we talk about your experience as just the typical college student, right? Mm-hmm. Studying psychology, taking your undergrad courses, playing with Freddie and the Seven Dwarfs. And then you kind of move into the world of college basketball, big time college basketball, and different environment. So I want to get just a sense of just kind of how different was your life as you kind of made that transition. And then what kind of adjustments did you have to make? Because now, there's a lot of practices and there's travel. And so how did your life kind of change, and what adjustments did you have to make personally?
Yeah, for me, it ended up being helpful because when you have a lot of time and it's not disciplined time, then you can waste the time just doing different things. But when you got the combination of this strict schedule that you have at the D1 level in terms of all the things you have to do, and then plus, man, this is just getting a window into your opportunity to accomplish a dream and, to potentially be on the team and then be on the team. And, obviously you're a walk-on, so you want to stay on the team. And you just want to, do everything you can just to, just to be a good teammate and just to, show thanks to the other coaches. So, so the stricter schedule, benefited me. I just had to focus in a lot more on classes and, just with the time that I had, and then just, learn as I went in terms of how to be successful on both ends.
Yeah. And, you mentioned you had this idea of potentially walking on the team at Michigan. And you mentioned, let's talk a little bit about that kind of dream, so to speak. When did it kind of really set in that it was reality for you? Was it early on when you were in preseason? Was it the first time you put on the maize and blue uniform? Was it a practice? When did it sink in? Like, holy crap! I'm playing here at Michigan. Like, this is sweet. This is cool. This is a team I've watched on television. I watched Glenn Rice and Ramil Robinson win the national title. When did it sink in for you? Like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, a couple of times. So one, we're having a meeting. And I'm sitting in the meeting and, all the players that I'm working out with around, and it's the time when coaches can come in. So, Coach Fisher's there. He's just talking about different things. And then I'm kind of like, that's Coach Steve Fisher, so it's just like this aha moment that, wow, I'm in a team setting. He's actually the coach, and that's happening. And so, like I said, my heart was just in everything I was doing. And, it came to that point, where, when I had the opportunity to see my name for the first time on a jersey, just kind of laid out before things got going, that was really like, wow, this is really, coming to fruition. This is happening.
That's a walk-on who gets his name on the jersey. Not always the case, man, but you pulled it off. So let's talk about your first game action. I dug into the archives, man. January 10th, 1991 at Iowa. Take us back to Carver Hawkeye Arena. Steve Fisher points at Freddie Hunter, says, Freddie, get in there. What do you remember about that experience?
Yeah, it was. It's perfect because that was the first time where that uniform was laid out for me. So, before the game, Bobby Bland gets the uniforms, put it out. I see it there. So it's just the whole wow. I'm putting on the jersey, the shorts, the warm ups, and just traveling with the team. And I'm in the mindset that I just wanted to, help out in practices, sit on the bench, have a good seat, but just cheer on the team. So that was completely, my mindset even going in. So my buddy Sean Dobbins, who was the other walk-on, we're sitting at the end of the bench, we're watching the game, cheering for everyone. And then it came as a complete surprise to me when I got that call from Steve Fisher to come in the game. And it was a blur, but I just, coach calls, whatever coach says you do. So I just remember kind of, pulling off my pants and, listening, I thought, to whatever he told me. But it was a surreal moment because he called me into a Big Ten game, on the road to play. So it was quite amazing.
Do you recall early in the game, late in the game, close game? I mean, what do you recall about kind of when you kind of then step onto the court and it's got to be moving 1,000 miles per hour for you, I would think, but.
Yeah, it is moving so fast, and it's really just all the practice that you're doing that reminds you, what plays, what sets, what defenses, because, it's kind of like, is this happening? But you're in the moment, so you just got to be focused and, tuned in. So, I was playing a little bit of the 4 and the 5, so it'd be switching on AC Earl. And I remember never been as much of an offensive player, but, you get the ball down low and you put up a fake and you make a shot, and it's just like, wow, these things are happening. So it's moving fast, but you're competing, on the road, trying to do everything you can to win.
Gotcha. Interestingly enough, so here you are, Freddie and the Seven Dwarfs 1 year earlier. You're playing. Steve Fisher looks down. You, Freddie, go in at Carver Hawkeye Arena against the Hawkeyes. But 9 days later, you're in the starting lineup at Wisconsin, arguably the toughest place to play in the Big Ten. A lot of people would say that. But then you become a mainstay in the starting 5 for the rest of the season. So how unexpected was this journey for you? You're playing intramural ball, the stepping out of the court for tip-off against Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan State, and so on. Just how, I guess, surreal was this sometimes for you?
Yeah, I didn't it didn't seem like it could happen. And then it's happening right there. And I wanted to, do whatever I was doing to, get it to the point. And, what I didn't realize, and I think this was just the excitement and just thankfulness of being a walk-on, is that, hey, you're a student, you're watching them win the national championship, you're looking at these guys, and now you have a chance to be on the practice floor helping out. So, the one thing for me, and it was kind of how my game was, is I just every second I was thankful. So I was, hustling, getting rebounds, just doing those things. And I didn't realize that the coaches were seeing me, get rebounds, take charges, play smart ball in practice, that they would see that translate to the game. So, so that's why, that same practice and just desire, was what was able to, get me to the point where I could, fill that fifth slot on starting and just, help out the team as much as we could.
It's a crazy ride, I mean, from playing intramural hoops to starting at Wisconsin, you just like, I don't know if I've ever heard before. You hear these kind of wild stories of like Scottie Pippen, the team manager at Central Arkansas, or Dennis Rodman, falling into Southeast Oklahoma. And it's just one of these stories. And you're like, how does a guy in 1 year go from this to that? It's just had to be a wild ride for you. And, as thrilling as that season might have been for you, actually, let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. How did your buddies react to you? Those guys you played with at pickup, or the Freddie and the Seven Dwarfs guys, because you lived presumably in the dorm around all the other college students. Sometimes when you're in athletics, you could be a little isolated, so to speak. You're a man of the people. Mm-hmm. How'd your buddies react to you on campus when they're like, "That's Freddie, man. That's Freddie on TV"?
It's funny because for like the circle of folks I knew, they had the same thought about the level that we were playing on, and then the level that the team was on. So some of them were like, I don't know if you're going to be able to do that or be able to compete and, to play and to start. So I think some were incredulous, but they were just excited because they were literally playing with me, playing together. And then now
you're one of them.
Exactly. And that was, that was really the buzz that happened that first year is because I'm playing everywhere, playing against folks. And then I'm just literally a student. And there wasn't as much of a story, to the team. But then this all happened. So I was a true, I became a fan favorite just because they literally saw, I think, themselves in me just as someone that was a student, had an opportunity. And every time I went out, I really felt, Danny, that I was representing the school. And I always wanted to give my best because it was just living a dream that I think a lot of others had. But it was exciting. Everybody was excited and, thankful for, the fun that the journey provided.
Yeah, and I want to ask you too. You mentioned you became a bit of a fan favorite. Again, just doing some background research on you, learning, digging into your story a little bit. I sensed you were also Steve Fisher, Coach Steve Fisher, seemed to have a pretty strong affinity for you. So talk about him, and because again, it seems like he had some great admiration for you. What did you two connect, and what did you kind of find impressive, or what was your relationship like with Coach Fisher?
Yeah. Coach Fisher was awesome. I mean, to have a national championship under your belt and to really just want to do what you can to create the right team environment and win. So, the one thing he always said is whoever's going to play defensive rebound is going to play. And it didn't matter to him whether it was a scholarship or walk-on. He just gave everybody that opportunity. And for me, as a walk-on, you got these scholarship players, but to really follow through on that and give me that opportunity to play, was awesome. And he's just so special to me because he really kind of lifted me up because I was willing to do whatever he needed. So he's just very special. He always, enjoyed talking, with me and about me to the press because it really was finding somebody that could contribute and help a team out. So yeah, just so appreciative of Coach Fisher.
Well, if I think you do some kind of coaching or involved with youth now, and I think you got to know, like, that's a coach's dream, a kid who just is like, Coach, what do you need me to do? So I imagine it's not surprising that he had some great admiration and for you. As thrilling as that 1990-91 season was, for you on a personal level, for the Wolverines, it's a pretty, by their standards, pretty disappointing 14-15 season. And so much of the talk that 1990-1991 season is not about what's happening on the court at that time, but really about what the future in Ann Arbor is going to look like. Because in the fall, we have Juwan Howard, Jimmy King, and Ray Jackson commit to Michigan. Three highly rated recruits, and in Juwan and Jimmy's case, very highly rated. And then in the spring, we have Jalen Rose and Chris Webber pledged to Michigan. So what was your mindset at the time, and how did you kind of take all this in? Because that's the big talk in Ann Arbor is, well, what's happening next year? Is all these studs coming to campus, and so how did you kind of, I guess, navigate that, and kind of how did you process some of the things you were hearing out there?
Yeah, and as teammates, you're looking at what's happening, and it's funny because Demetrius Caleb was graduating, so sometimes he'd lead the conversations because I think the reality was there's only one ball, on the court, and you got all these experienced veterans, and you got this amazing class coming through. So and how's it going to work? How are we all going to come together? Who's going to start? Who's going to play? So those questions, come into your mind a lot. For me, still being a walk-on, there's obviously the question, like, I'm a walk-on now, and I'm going to be a walk-on, that next year. But there's always that gratefulness when things come together. Just how do you, help the team when things, do come together?
And those guys come on campus, and it's a whirlwind, right? And there's a lot of talk of them being the greatest recruiting class ever. But interestingly enough, we sometimes, I think, forget that in early 1990s, this was not a time when freshmen really made an impact. Certainly 5 of them. You'd have them here and there, Purvis Ellison. You'd have freshmen make impact, but I mean, even Shaq stayed in school 3 years. And so this. You get these. How did that change the dynamic of the team heading into the 1991-92 season? That these freshmen are coming in, and it's a lot of euphoria around them. How did that kind of change the dynamic, or the expectations, or the tenor of the team?
Yeah, it was. For the team, you always want to bring everyone together, but the story was so much on this class, this Fab Five, this highly recruited class. So, when things happen, for instance, at press day, and all the attention, all the cameras, all the interviews are, with the Fab Five. So there's opportunity, for people to look and be concerned about, man, why is all the tension there, and how do we, come together and stay together as a team? But I think there's also realization that I had and others had is like, wow, we could, just with the talent, with the experience, this could be something special if we're able to make it happen. So a lot for me, just being the captain then was, how do we keep everybody together as one whole unit, not as a unit of 5 and unit of everyone else, so that we could get to the point where some good things could happen.
That's great. So I want to talk about a few notable games that season. And I want to start about the 5th game of the season. That's against Duke, the defending national champs. They come to Ann Arbor. I remember watching the game at home in Chicago. That's a wild game, goes into overtime. Duke wins 88-85. Raucous environment there at Chrysler. What sticks out about that game for you?
Some of the lead up to the game was probably most memorable because they had just won the national championship, just beat UNLV. So people saw them so high in terms of what they could do, but I could just see, especially from Chris, from Jalen, from Juwan. I mean, they were just so dialed in, to the lead up where they're stepping things up in terms of what they could do and helping us step up. And it was, you only compete when you believe, and you could see that they believed. So you knew that we could compete just because they started stepping things up. And then you could see as the game went on, I mean, we were going blow to blow with them, during that game, just because of the belief and, just to silence the doubters about, what they could do as freshmen and what we could do as a team.
So a lot of Duke haters out there in the world, a lot of Duke lovers. As you're watching that game and you're playing in the game too, who kind of impressed there? Was it Grant? Was it Bobby Hurley? Like, who kind of said, like, man, that they're Christian? Who did you look at and be like, man, you see him on television, but then you're on the court with them, right? And so, who did you look at and be like, man, this dude's a baller, man?
Yeah, first, I even talked just my own teammate, just for Chris. Because he was just playing at another level. We always knew Chris was so talented, but just to see him raise at that level was something. Hurley was just, for his size and just his poise and calm and leading the team. I mean, just the way he could drive things was just so impressive. And then the Leitner just always found a way. I mean, just through that game, whether he was playing well or whether he's not playing well, he was always, raising the team up. So, from that first game, you could really see those two, and then just, how strong they and confident they were, as the defending national champions about, what they could bring to the table.
Another game I want to talk about is a Sunday contest in South Bend, Indiana against Notre Dame. And that's the first time Coach Fisher starts all 5 freshmen together. A lot of talk about when's he going to do it, And he had held off doing it. You had got some starts. James Voskuhl had gotten some starts. Michael Talley. And so it's very easy for an us versus them mentality to take hold, especially with all the hype the Fab Five received. So I want to know, just from your standpoint, Freddie Hunter, a guy who was in the starting lineup, how did you kind of personally navigate that as a 22-year-old guy? Because those 5 guys, man, they're psyched up because all 5 of them are starting. How did you kind of navigate that as just, a young man?
Yeah, I think first was just being thankful to start and be a starter for as many games as I was. And then it's a different dynamic because there's, who I am as a player, but then there's also that responsibility of the captain. So there was a time when I started and then my minutes started going down to where I had a 4-game stretch where I didn't even play. So I'm thinking as a player, man, am I ever going to play again or get a chance to, help out? But at the same time, as a captain, I'm still, going out there and, meeting the referees, shaking hands with the other team. And that was, when I'm in Duke, playing against Duke, we're going out talking to the referees, and I'm shaking, Christian, Christian Laettner and hand right there. So it's like, wow, is this really happening? But that continues. So I'm always thinking about the team and then kind of wondering about me. And then when there's those opportunities where I could come in and be a spark plug and help out and, just be a part, I'm thankful for that. But I always want to see, man, what things are we missing? How do we make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of coming together?
That's a great point. So, and interestingly, I want to talk about this because by this time, it's public knowledge that you've been diagnosed with spina bifida. So when did you first discover, or when were you first diagnosed with that condition, and how did that kind of impact you? Because I would imagine a lot of back issues when you're a 6'4", 6'5" guy, those aren't good. So when did you first get diagnosed, and then how did you kind of manage that?
Yeah, it happened right at the beginning of the season, and one of the things we're doing, we're competing. So everybody wants to bring your best because there's 16 guys on the squad, and all 16 could start or could play. And then when the injury happened early, you're missing that practice time, you're missing that competing time. So you're not able to showcase yourself, and everybody else is kind of elevating themselves. So, what was fortunate for me is, it was some challenges and different things I had to go through, in terms of, pre-prep and everything, related to the back. And I'm thankful that those things didn't, continue on. But you just want to be out there healthy enough to compete. And then also knowing you're competing against some really talented players. So you want to have your best health and your best mind in there as well.
Gotcha. And unlike the previous season, where you guys go 14-15, you get to taste March Madness here in 1991-92. What did you think? You, Freddie Hunter, sitting there, what did you think were realistic expectations for that team as the tournament approached?
I think one, we were upset that we only got a 6th seed just because we had played against some of the best. We just beat Indiana at home. We were gelling as a team, and playing, getting that momentum. And, I had some folks, Danny, that came up and said, man, the senior day, coach should have started you. You should have started as your last day. I was like, no way. Because, when you got the momentum and everyone coming together, you just want to keep that going. So we went into it really confidently. And we had some cool signs that happened. So one, when Fisher won the championship in '89, the road to the championship was Atlanta through Lexington, Kentucky, through, Seattle at that time. And then, so when we saw where we were playing, that was a key, just a good sign for us. And then there was also a Muhammad Ali story that happened in Atlanta. Yeah, so Ray Jackson is just, hanging out with Jimmy, and he is going in the hotel, and then he kind of looks in the elevator and then sees, man, that looks like Muhammad Ali. So he's trying to be cool about it, but, also when you see someone like that, he happened to be staying in the same hotel. And what was cool is that, him and some others just started getting all the players, and he took probably like a half an hour. And then he literally invites us to have the opportunity to go to his room for about a half an hour. And, he's talking to us, we're asking questions, and he knows about the Fab Five and our story. And, what was amazing is that from him being an underdog from his start, he was actually encouraging us, to embrace the underdog role and really, kind of coin the term, you have the opportunity to shock the world. So, those little signs in terms of, being in a hotel with Muhammad Ali and he's encouraging you to, go out and be your best. It just, gave us that more confidence that, hey, this could be something special.
And so Ali just holds court with you guys in a hotel lobby.
Yep, he does. I got a picture still, just of, he took pictures of everyone, the way he operates, he does magic tricks and, different things, but he's just so cool and relaxed, but also just giving you confidence that, the moment's here for a reason. And, you guys can, make this moment something special.
Gotcha. So let's kind of dig into the tournament. You guys beat Temple, then East Tennessee State, then Oklahoma State. where Eric Riley saves the team against Oklahoma State in particular, one of those upperclassmen. You've got a rematch with Ohio State on the horizon. Michigan and Ohio State, of course, great lovers of one another. So the Buckeyes had beaten you guys twice that season. Jimmy Jackson's their star and was a stud hooper. How would you characterize the pulse of the team heading into that rematch with Ohio State?
Yeah, you kind of have targets, in terms of you're glad the brackets work out this way because since they beat them twice, this was our opportunity to get back at them. So, one, the fact that they're Ohio State, two, they beat you twice. And, it really was like an away game. Lexington's a lot closer to Columbus than it is in Ann Arbor, and it felt that way. They traveled down there real strongly, but, we came into the game just ready, and, this was going to be a binging moment for us.
And it is. You guys win 75-71 in OT. You look back on that game, and Ohio State, the veteran team, is the one that really falls apart kind of down the stretch. And it's the young guys, the Michigan team, predominantly those freshmen on the court, who really kind of are the steady ones and kind of lead that victory there. Take us into the aftermath of that Ohio State game. The court, the post-game locker room, the bus ride back. What memory sticks with you? Because it's always good to beat Ohio State. I got to imagine it's always good to beat Ohio State, or even better to beat Ohio State with the Final Four. So what memory sticks with you about the aftermath of that?
Yeah, it was just everyone just looking around for who they could hug, who they could talk to. I mean, we're in the Final Four, and that's such a momentous feat to get to the Final Four. One that it was Ohio State. It was a close game, overtime, going back and forth. So, when it comes through, man, you just so, wow, we've actually going to the Final Four. So I think the things for me, remember, is, going up and cutting the nets down, and everybody, gets a piece of the net. And then what was cool was the final net. I remember Jalen grabbing it and then giving it to Coach Fisher's son, just putting it right around his neck. And then just in the locker room, and, Juwan talked about Shock the World, and we're just like, wow, we're about to go compete for the national championship. So it was all those things from, where we started, from the doubters, from, coming back and, getting revenge on Ohio State and, getting a chance to compete for the national championship.
Yeah, going to a Final Four is sweet, but when you're a Michigan man, beating Ohio State is just as good, I think, right? So, I mentioned earlier that us versus them mentality that could have taken hold on that team. And, I'm just an outsider watching the Fab Five in Michigan from afar here in Chicago. Personally, I think it's a credit to that team and really the upperclassmen such as yourself that squad didn't that dissension didn't happen to the extent that it derailed your season. Because internal drama and strife have torn down a lot of great teams over the years. I'm curious about, one, your role as captain and what the role you felt you played in kind of keeping drama away as much as possible. But then also, who did you think, what or who kind of kept that team on track and prevented that from happening?
Yeah, first, kind of the role of captain, and it starts in the preseason and everything we're doing. So we got the opportunity to scrimmage against each other, and the desire for the freshmen was for all five of them to take on everyone else, and we intentionally, purposely never let that happen. Just because you didn't want to have those two dynamics, and because there's just not good that comes from that. So. For me, it was always looking at egos, and when there was anything that was coming up from anyone that was more about me or pouting or, because, you got these All-American players and they're used to, being the star and getting all the time. And there's sometimes when they're not getting time, and then they all want to play together as a team. So for me, it's just, how do you talk to people and just, let them know about this bigger picture in terms of, when we could come together. In terms of influences, my buddy Chip Armour that was on the team. So, sometimes people don't get as much time playing, but, they have a good, strong voice that people listen to. And and in the Fab Five documentary, Jalen talks about the number 43, was his Chips, because Chip was 6'9" big guy and Jalen wasn't, so he liked to have those loose fitting clothes. So from different times, and we even had a team meeting where we just got together and just really understood that we've got to listen to the coaches fully, and the timing may not be what you want individually, but if we can trust the coaches and trust each other, then we're going to have the opportunity to do something special. So there's a lot of leadership, on the whole squad, but we did come together as a team and made that decision, and I think that was really, really key.
That's great. And you talked about doing something special, which you guys, of course, did, make it to the Final Four. But then in the Final Four, the semifinals, you guys beat Cincinnati, and you have a rematch against Duke in the finals. Duke's looking to repeat. They're going to be the first ones to do it since the UCLA squads back in the day. Take us into the preparations for that game or the pregame locker room. What sticks out?
Yeah, for before the game, it's almost similar to the thought with Ohio State, just like this was one of the ones that we circled because this was a team that beat us. We had the opportunity to come back and beat them. And then we knew we could compete. It was interesting. One of the things I remember, we're in our hotel rooms and we're watching the Leitner shot in Kentucky, where, we're actually in our rooms on the road watching this. And, those things are coming to our mind as well. That, wow, we're kind of happy that they're there, but, they're, having a lot of good things come about. But, we're competing hard. What I could tell in practice is, there's a level that you can go to, and, why you need the horses, you can see how high, folks are jumping high, they're competing. So we had real strong confidence, coming into the game that we could compete. And man, this could be something that has never happened before.
And of course you guys do compete. You're up by 1 at halftime, tight game. Duke outscores you guys though 41-20 in the second half. So what was the difference? Because you guys play them really tough in Ann Arbor early in the season, only 5 games in. You play them really well in the first half. What did you kind of see as about the difference in that game, the second half specifically?
Yeah, there were certain kind of almost defensive principles that we always knew and we always did. So we coached over and over again. And so one of them was when someone's going to the baseline, man, you don't slide your feet to the baseline. You slide your foot over the baseline to prevent that. And I remember this one play, I think Grant Hill went baseline, and you could see that our defense wasn't doing those same principles. So you could tell, man, there's something a little off in terms of what we're always doing to get to that point. And then, I think the other thing from halftime, we're in the locker room. It's kind of interesting because things are a little bit quiet in there, which is usually not the case for this squad. So there's just some of the realization that happened. And, Duke came in right out of halftime just with a whole lot more just energy. And so those things, I think, kind of established some negative momentum for us in that game.
Shaq tells a great story about playing Duke and Leitner at LSU, and he's there, and he said, I thought I was going to rip these boys up. And then he's like, man, what you realize is, one, they can play, and then they put on the eye black and they become they're like snipers. Those guys can hoop too. There's a reason they're in the championship game. And so what do you recall this euphoric run? And at that point, there might not have been a college basketball team that got as much attention as the Fab Five and that Michigan squad. What do you recall about the aftermath of that national championship game after the sad loss to Duke?
Yeah. First, I recall just, walking back and, kind of talking about Chip as well as one of the senior leaders. It's natural for the media to want to put their cameras in front of you. But he, Chris was very emotional, and he was just got into protective mode. Because he just it hurts so much, and that's your teammate and your brother. So I remember him helping the cameras to get away from their close angles.
It's a nice way to put
trying to put on them. Yeah, because there was so much emotion and desire and heart, going all the way. And then when when it ends like that, and just that reality comes in, it's just, it hurts. And, we're going home, and I remember, flying in, and, so many people came out, to when the aircraft came in, and, to this, talk that we were able to give, just kind of recapping the season. So it just, there were always huge crowds, but just even to, have folks there supporting us was something special. But, you're also thinking, wow, you got so much of the team coming back that, this next year, even though I'm not going to be a part of it, can be really something special just based on the 91, 92 season.
And I want to ask, when you reflect on that season today, 30 years later, what moment kind of remains with you? A practice, a meal together, travel, a game. What moment just always kind of sticks with you, then you kind of immediately go back to?
Yeah, one of them is kind of just a funny story with the freshman is, Chip had a bigger car. I had a 2-door Mustang with a stick shift. And there was one time we're traveling on the road to a game, and I don't know how, but I was designated to be the person that's picking them up. So you got me 6'5", you got 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 6'9", and 6'9", all in a 1984 Mustang all together, and it's literally, I think Juwan was in the front seat, and his clothes were, his luggage was hanging outside the car as we're driving. And it's just, so what that brings back to me is just, man, these are just 18, 19-year-olds just, enjoying the experience, and talented, competitive, fiery, but, still 18 to 19-year-olds. And, I just see them a lot even now with all the things they're doing just from that perspective.
And, for you played 2 seasons at Michigan, and we talked about this unbelievable kind of journey from Freddie and the Seven Dwarfs to the University of Michigan to the Fab Five. But you have these 2 seasons at Michigan. One is a 14-15 campaign that's filled with some really great kind of personal triumphs, for Freddie Hunter, right? And then the next is really dominated by the Fab Five, but it also brings you to the biggest stage in college basketball, right? Like this great team success. So how different were these 2 seasons for you if you kind of put them side by side?
Yeah, they were different, but they really built upon each other in a good way. So, there was that opportunity that I had to experience individually of achieving a dream, and then just going above and beyond that to, I just wanted to sit on the bench to, man, I'm starting, and, on national television, and, fan favorites. So I had that experience, but, still as a competitor and from team sports, you want to win. And to be able to be part of, like you said, just an iconic group, with the Fab Five, and to end up going all the way to championship. I mean, it was just such an amazing journey. And just so thankful for, Hall of Famers now, Chris Webber, and just to be a part of that team. And, one of the things I do, I work in youth sports. So, you see all these kids that have come through from 20 years I've been there. And, just how many Jalens there are. And, you can see even now competing, how many Jalens across the country. So to, just not only from the basketball success, but just, from the shorts and the culture, and just to be a part of that, and, have the, fortunate to be a captain and with them all the time. I mean, it's just really, really just special, and I'm just very thankful.
You knew you were a part of something big when you were, 20 years old, on that team. Does it sometimes surprise you 30 years later? Or not surprise you 30 years later that the Fab Five is still what's talked about. That Michigan team still has such cultural relevance.
Yeah, it does, because it when I mention to people, who I am or what team I was on, and I have folks talk about, man, I was 13 years old, I was 11 years old, I was 10, and just you don't realize when you're playing it just how much it impacted people. Just watching these guys and this team compete. When I was playing, they always look back at different teams, but I don't know of a team that had so much cultural significance just with the impact. So it's really special to be a part of that, and it is amazing. And even cooler with Juwan now back as the head coach. So it's good to see how strong it still is to this day.
And how many times do you remind people, hey, that team that you all know about? Yeah, I was the captain. Those boys listen to me. How often do you have to remind people of that?
Oh, no, it's a good question. I tend to be very low key with how I am. And, if it comes up, it comes up. So you let it come up. But it's just, for me, man, just to, like you said, it's from, wanting to just be on the team and sit on the bench to, being captain of one of the most iconic college basketball teams ever that played national championship. I mean, just how thankful, how amazing is that story. So it's really cool to have been a part of it.
And let's talk just about that story. The Fab Five documentary came out a few years ago. I think one of the, if not the most widely watched of the 30 for 30 documentaries that ESPN's done. You watched that. How would you characterize that film and how it portrayed the squad? And also, was it odd watching these personal memories of yours, these moments that you have ownership of? Was it odd watching that play out on screen? So how accurate, and then how unique was it for you to be watching your life literally play out before you?
It was very accurate. And, what I admire, especially with Jalen taking the lead is, when you're the executive producer, you can tell the story the way you want to. But to be willing to open things up, as much as he did. And, there were things that I was watching that I was learning about, as well, during the course of that. So it was very accurate. It was fun. You're thinking about the journey and, how he could put together so much in just that short time. But it was very, very accurate and on point, and he did a great job.
Cool. So, hey, before we get out of here, Freddie, and I can't thank you enough for sharing your time with us here this morning. It's a morning here in Chicago. We're recording on the morning of July 3rd. But let's close out the show with some rapid fire questions. Just really fast, man. What is the coolest arena you played in?
Coolest arena, I think Wisconsin. And Minnesota. So Wisconsin, just from the loudness. Minnesota was just, it had the uneven surface, and both of them were just rabid fans. So they're just, when you're playing in there, it, and it's a great home court advantage for them.
And speaking of fans, who were the craziest, wildest fans you encountered in your 2 years at Michigan?
The Big Ten fans were loud. Notre Dame's fans were not nice. and the dynamic is usually you have some protection behind you, but literally that game, Notre Dame students are right behind your bench. And so it was very memorable just in terms of some of the things you heard. But you think about those fans, and I didn't have a chance to play in Cameron, but talking to the guys, coming back from that, just tell what a crazy environment that was.
Jason Andreas, who played on Michigan, who was actually a redshirt freshman in Michigan State's 2000 team, when I asked him that question about the crazy opposing fans, he talks about Illinois, and he says the craziest thing their fan section, student section, sits right behind the opponent's bench. And he goes, man, for some reason we had all of our names on the back of our warm-up jackets, and it was not fun because just ammunition. They didn't even have to do any research. It was just right there to know who you were, and they could rag on you. We've talked here about some of the opponents you guys face. I'm curious for you, who was the most impressive opponent you faced? A particular player who really impressed, a guy who you were on the court with, or a guy you watched and was like, yeah, wow. I'm playing with Chris Webber. I'm playing with Jalen. These guys are hoopers. This guy's something, man. Who really impressed? Who caught your eye?
That's a good question. There's because there's a lot of folks that went to the league. Steve Smith was always tough just because you're going against them, 2 times every year. And it's funny because I played against him with high school, but he's still at another level there. And I just remember personally just the battles with him. A lot of the time I was checking Jimmy Jackson as well. And I think for both of them, it's just the game slowed down for them. So it was always tougher as a defender, when you're going against them. But, obviously when you think about Grant Hill and just his athleticism and just his knowledge of the game, I mean, that's just something you just admire from the other bench.
The Michigan team in 1992 that makes its run to the national title game, who would you say was kind of the heart of that team?
For the for which team?
The 1992 team that goes to the national title game.
It's like Jalen and Chris are kind of two sides of the heart, So Jalen was always just the leader, the talker, he just brought Detroit to whatever environment that he was in. And then Chris was such an ultra competitor in addition to being just so skilled and gifted that just his desire to do whatever he could to win. I mean, those two together were always leading factors in terms of, how we did and how we played.
Gotcha. I guess some of your teammates might say you, by the way, but the Fab Five, they get so much attention from that team. But another member of that squad was Rob Pelinka. Now, of course, the general manager of the Lakers. He was Kobe's agent. What's one word or phrase you would use to describe him?
Rob, cool. He just always, just his demeanor, because you've got a super intelligent business student, going into law, but he just was always, he just competed hard, played hard, but he was just cool through it all. He was kind of unchangeable with all the ups and downs, but really a cool player to have as a team.
Gotcha. And to you, final question to you, who was the most likable of those 5 freshmen? And that's not to suggest you didn't enjoy the others and didn't have good relations with the others, but which one did you kind of have a little bit more of a soft spot for, so to speak? Who did you kind of click with, a little bit better? Or
yeah, for me it was just Juwan, just because and Juwan had a different leadership style. He seemed to be older than everyone. He was also, he was my roommate too on the road games as well. So, when you talk about, whether whenever we're playing on the road, who's the coach is matching up with folks with, it's Juwan. So, and it was just really when he got the opportunity to come back and be the head coach. I mean, that just really, really was just special because everybody loved Juwan. And even, in the league and the NBA as a coach, I mean, people just love Juwan, and just because, who he is and how he, how he carries himself.
Well, I hope he gets you good tickets these days.
Yeah, I love what he's doing with the squad, man. It's just, back at that level.
All right. Well, let's end it there, Fred. Let's let you get on with your day. Appreciate you joining us here on the 19-9 podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thanks, of course, to Freddie Hunter for sharing his time discussing University of Michigan basketball. And thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Visit 199.com for some of the flyest college basketball gear around, and subscribe to our podcast for more shows celebrating basketball history and culture. Until next time, this is the Chucker signing off.
Thank you for listening to the 19-9 podcast. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do. And while you're at it, leave us a rating or review. 5 stars only, like the basketball camp. We also have links to all of 19-9 social media so you never miss a release. Until next time.